Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Video Game Preservation. My name is Rodolfo, and we'll be tackling on why video games are disappearing and why it matters. Let's check it out. What if I told you that some of your favorite video games are already gone? Not broken, not rare, but gone. Either digitally or physically. Now, games that millions of people played that define entire eras are quietly disappearing. And the scariest part, most people don't even notice when it happens. Because unlike movies or music, video games don't sit on the shelves forever. They depend on technology. Now, companies and systems that don't last, and when those systems disappear, the games go with them. Which I'll also be explaining the digital and physical formats of these games. Now, video games are one of the most important forms of modern digital media today because they tell stories, build communities, and shape culture as well. But they're also one of the most fragile. In this video, I'm going to break down one by one why video games are disappearing, the hidden reasons behind it, and why preserving them legally is more important than ever. Because this isn't just about games, it's about losing pieces of our digital history. Now, let's start with something most people don't think about. You don't actually own most of your games anymore. This is the digital part that I was talking to a while ago. When you buy a digital game, you're not buying a physical copy. You're buying a license, a permission to access that game. Now, that permission can be taken away, legally speaking, even though you have paid for it online. If a company shuts down a store, removes a title, or disables its servers, that game can disappear instantly. So, this is the downside of digital games. We've already seen this happen multiple times. Entire digital storefronts shutting down, taking hundreds of games with them, like, no warning, no backup, no recovery. And if you didn't download it in time, it's gone. That's the digital part. Now, when it comes to modern games, are also heavily dependent on the internet. Even single-player games often require online authentication, updates, server connections. So, when those servers shut down, the game doesn't just lose features, it can become completely unplayable. So you can't play that game anymore. Think about that. A game you paid for, installed, and owned its access to can stop working entirely because a company decides to turn something off. It sounds annoying, right? But this means many modern games don't have a true offline version. Now, this is one of the company's methods protecting its products in piracy. They exist only as long as their servers do. That's online as well. Now, when it comes to old systems, or let's just say physical consoles like the PlayStation and Xbox, where they use CDs and everything, even older physical games aren't safe because the consoles break, discs get scratched, or cartridges degrade over time, frequent use, and more importantly, hardware becomes obsolete. So that's one downside when it comes to these physical games. Company stops producing parts as well because they'll just have to release the console. Repair becomes expensive or even impossible. And eventually the system needed to play these games just disappear. So this creates a huge problem. So investing on physical part, even if the game still exists, there's no way to play it once the system breaks. So that's the problem with both the digital and the physical games that we're encountering these days in our generation. Now, when it comes to the licensing and legal barriers, here's the thing that is one of the most important in video game preservation. There's a legal side. One of the biggest hidden reasons games disappear, which many games include, is licensed music, real-world brands, actors, likeness, something like that. Like the modern games we see today, sometimes they're being sponsored by Coca-Cola. Music is being done by a music artist for a background or a video, short video, or intermission of the game. So these happen. When they expire, company agreements often can't legally sell the game anymore once it's already done. Once that license with the artist or brand that the game company has already been agreed on, it will be shut down. So instead of renewing expensive agreements, they just remove the game entirely. So that's why so many older titles are never re-released again. Not because they're forgotten, because they're legally locked away by license agreements. Now, why does this matter in preserving these games? So, because games, or video games, are more than entertainment. They are actually art, history, and cultural expression. They capture how people thought, prayed, and connected at a specific moment in time, and losing games means losing those moments. Even if it's classic films were suddenly erased or entire albums vanish forever, that's already happening with our video games these days. So it's becoming a pop culture part of it everywhere around the world. Now, here, preservation efforts, despite of all these things that's happening, with all the people, are fighting to preserve the games, or striving hard to preserve the games, communities around the world are working on emulation, game archiving, hardware restoration, and documentation. One of them is the most famous part, which is the emulation. In particular, has become one of the most powerful tools as well. It allows modern systems to recreate older hardware, making playable again, even when the original console is gone. So, without these efforts from communities, thousands of games would already be lost. However, preservation often exists in legal gray areas, which I mentioned a while ago, which creates tensions between protecting intellectual property rights and preserving cultural history. So, the big picture here is that this isn't just a gaming problem, it's a digital media problem. As more media becomes digital only, we risk losing access entire parts of our culture. Now, companies have this already locked down and everything, so video games are just one of the first major examples of this happening at a scale. And if we ignore it now, it will only get worse in the near future, because everything's going to be digital, and digital games is being shut down, and you won't be able, even though you already legally paid it, you won't be able to get that game. So, in video game preservation, it's not just about nostalgia. It's about protecting history and culture. Because once a game disappears, it might never come back. So, the next time you download a game, ask yourself, do I actually really own this game even though I already paid it? Or I'm just borrowing it? And more importantly, what happens when it's gone? The games that you paid. So, there you have it, folks. If we don't preserve our games now, we risk losing them forever. Thank you for watching here at the Video Game Preservation. Again, this is Rodolfo. And always remember, folks, every game you save is worth saving.